we're going to do an interview. Something like that. Oh my goodness.
At last.
At last we're here. Before we get into everything, shall we tell the listener how long it's taken us to make this happen?
Yeah, why not?
I think I reached out to your people at the beginning of 2022, or maybe the end of 2021.
Is that right?
I think so.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
And I have to say, I almost want to start with like, without putting my own show down too much, why did you say yes?
Why did I say yes? Oh, I love the concept of it.
Great.
And then I listened to a couple of the shows and I thought it was so clever and good. But then I was like, oh, but these are really great actors and they're really, so I have to, when you're in the middle of doing press for a TV show, you get sort of like, I don't know about other actors, but you get to feeling like a jackass because you're just talking about this yourself, the same things over and over again.
The same anecdotes.
And this, yes, and then I don't have any good anecdotes, but the same stuff about your character and everything. And you start feeling kind of tired. And so somehow this seemed more legit to me, like really about performing and really about the theater and really about literature. And it seemed like not together. I could never get my publicist to kind of see that it was something that I needed some mental space around it. And and it really helped meeting you. I'm skipping ahead the story. So let's go. So I don't know.
So a year and a half later,
that's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then I guess I couldn't do it during the. You wanted to.
There were all sorts of
just during the.
Yeah, there were also. Well, actually, I think there were all sorts of little bits of like, it almost happened, and then
yes, I remember that.
Something happened for you, or something happened for me, or it was one of those like the thing that almost felt it was never going to be. It was like we were always so close. And then it wouldn't happen. And then fast forward a year and a half, and it turns out that you're literally coming to Oxford,
right?
Which is where I live now. And so that's where we are. We are in a very beautiful old room with this fine gentleman who I think is going to be poking his head over the sofa. And finally doing what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So a quick question before we launch into the speech. It was quite interesting. You just said to me there, that idea of it being different because you were doing all the press for the TV. And do you find, because you are a bona fide Broadway superstar, which again I feel not loads of people know in England because you've become so popular because of Succession. So everyone is like, oh yeah, sure, great TV actress. But with your experience on Broadway as well, do you find that same thing, what you were saying about press? And press can be very hard for a TV series because you're doing a lot and you're talking about the same thing. Do you find the same thing when you have to do press for a show, for a theatre show?
I just have never done so much press for anything else. Because Succession's a big hit because there's publicists involved, whereas I don't usually mess with that.
Yeah.
And also, most of my resume, I've done a good deal of Broadway, but most of it is off Broadway. I like to do new plays, like this speech from Juno and the Paycock. I played this part when I at the Irish Rep, which is a off-Broadway theater in New York. It's since been revived, by the way, even though it wasn't that long ago, because
in New York,
at the same theater. And I couldn't do it because of Succession.
So they were going to revive it, same cast, same director, exactly the same.
Well, I don't know if they were going to do everything the same. What happened is they got permission from the O'Casey estate to do the trilogy. So it's The Plow and the Stars, Juno and the Paycock, and Shadow of a Gunman.
Right. Okay.
So they did all three. It took months and months. I couldn't have ever done it. They were like, "What if you?" Because you were supposed to play a part in each play, and they were like, "Okay, what if you only play Juno? Can you get out just for those nights?" And
bloody Succession.
My producer just laughed at me.
Yeah,
he just laughed at me because I'd also just recently been made a regular character, so it's like. Which is it you want? Yeah,
don't throw that away.
If you're a guest player, you get paid way less, but you can say, I'm not available that day and that day and that day.
Yeah.
Perform me off Broadway.
Yeah. When did you become a regular in Succession? At what point were you a guest? And then when were you a regular?
At the start of Succession. I think Gerri was not even supposed to be an ongoing character. I was booked to do episode 2 through episode 6. I was booked to do 4 episodes. And possibly we might need you towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
You're very vague.
Yeah.
And then I ended up being in every episode that season, just as a guest star.
Yeah.
And then, like literally before they even they picked it up early. The HBO picked the show up early, and they offered me a regular, like almost right before they'd announced the picking up, because I was like, well, I'm a regular, but there's no show, you know.
Yeah.
So that happened.
Yeah.
And then
Oh, amazing. Right. Okay. But we must shelve Succession for the moment.
Okay.
We've mentioned it already briefly, but why don't you tell our listener what the speech is, what the play is, and what the speech is that you have picked as your favourite?
The play is Juno and the Paycock
Yeah.
by Sean O'Casey. It is a play that's done very often in Ireland, and not that often everywhere else. I mean, I almost never run into someone who really knows the play.
Yeah.
But it's strange that that's the case, because it is positively a classic play in every sense of the word. It's a beautifully written play, and the whole trilogy is good, but it's historically incredibly significant. It takes place during the Civil War in the 20s, and it's a masterfully done, because it's both comic and terribly tragic. I got cast. Oh, so first of all, my husband used to say to me, "You should play this part of Juno at some point." When we first got together, he was like, "You're too young now, but someday you should play this part." And I was like, "What is that play?" It's like something I remember reading about in drama school, not in drama school, in college. And then, what is it? What's it mean? Juno and the Paycock. What's a Paycock?
Yes.
You know, like it just never. It wouldn't penetrate my brain.
Yeah.
And finally, one day I was sitting around with Kieran O'Reilly and some other people and Kenny. We were having a drink, I think, and laughing, talking. He was like, "You guys one day should do Juno and the Paycock." And Kieran kind of laughed nervously, because he actually is one of the people who runs the Irish Rep.
Oh, and was it already in the pipeline?
No.
Oh, right, okay.
It's just like saying, "I'd like to play Amanda in the Glass Menagerie." It's
Yeah.
Like,
it's like no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I said, "When I'm old enough," and he went, "Oh, you're old enough."
You're like, have I aged so quickly?
Yes, but really, she could be 40, she could be 60.
Okay.
She's got grown children.
Yeah. Okay.
Their children are in their early 20s. So.
Yeah.
So Kieran and I kind of wanted to do this, but at the time that they wanted to do this, Sinead Cusack and I want to say, I should double check this.
Yeah, we can.
Kieran Hines.
Right. Sounds about right.
This had played in, I think, at the Abbey, and then maybe in the West End, and they were maybe going to bring it to Broadway. So the O'Casey estate was not really giving the rights.
Yeah.
And then that fell through, and it didn't come to the U.S.
Yeah.
So they got the rights last minute. I remember the phone calls were yesterday. I was out in Long Island, and the phone rang. It was Kieran. He was like, "You still want to do Juno and the Paycock?" I was like, "Yes." And then, but he wasn't directing it. He wanted to play the captain.
Fine.
So I had to pass Charlotte Moore's test, and it's kind of an odd part for me. I don't think it is, but they always cast. You know how Sinead Cusack has that kind of, like, she's little, but she's kind of scrappy and tough and
yes,
hoarse, and like, you know, that strong Earth Mother type part.
Yes.
I don't know how that came to be the
way we identify her,
the
but
cliche of it.
Yeah,
but
fine.
Charlotte was concerned because I have kind of a lighter, girlish voice compared to somebody like Colleen Dewhurst, which is before our time. But I had this idea, a different idea for her, where I thought you could play her like she's knowing and embittered, and you'd be perfectly in your rights to decide that about her. But I decided that it was more touching, more interesting to me if she wasn't defeated yet, because I mean, it starts with, you know, she's a little bit of a, what's that word, like, you know, she's careworn. But I decided, wouldn't it be better if she was really hopeful and kind of always thought things would turn out, and really that there's something like, do you know who the actress Giulietta Messina is?
No.
You don't?
Oh God.
Okay.
What am I missing?
Oh my goodness. List of homework.
Yes, please.
She was Fellini's wife. She's little and scrappy, just sort of smiling through tears, like very spunky, and there's nobody like her. Like she's a magical performer. Like she's a magician, you know.
Brilliant.
And I just thought, what if it was more of a Giulietta Messina type role?
Yeah.
So I just had this sort of a little bit of different idea about it, and everybody kind of went along with it.
And surely there's the whole thing of like further to fall. If you're not quite so careworn at the beginning,
right,
then what happens over the course of the play is more distressing to watch her go through. What do you think Kenny saw in you initially that he thought was right for Juno?
Well, you'd have to ask him, I suppose. I don't know.
Hopefully it's flattering.
I think he thinks I have a lot of emotional reserves, which is a very emotional role, and that I'm sort of adaptable to different plays in time, like different eras.
Yes.
Which is an odd thing to say, but
it's
you know,
not
some actors
not
are
everyone.
only contemporary, you know, or
Totally.
and also that I can do accents if I study hard enough, and this is supposed to be a North Dublin specific dialect, which I had to learn, you know. So
does he often cherry pick roles that he thinks you'd be good for? Like, does that happen quite often where he'll go, "Oh my gosh, I think you'd do this brilliantly"?
no.
He's like, just get off the stage, Joe.
No, I'm trying to think.
Because I always think it's very revealing. Like, I don't know, most actors must have this. You know, I had one of my best friends quite recently turn around and was like, "Oh God, when you're older, you should be Arkadina in The Seagull." And I was like, "Oh, that's oddly flattering." You know, when you're like, "God, I never thought of myself as that." So that's fascinating that you think I could play that. You know, like I think it's very interesting.
Seeing you,
So I think it's very interesting when someone who knows you well says, "Oh, I think you should."
I don't know. This is curious, but I don't know why he suggested Juno for me. And he doesn't go around suggesting parts exactly, but like I took an interest in actually the idea of playing, speaking of Amanda, and because I also had sort of a little bit of a unique idea for that part. And he was like, "That's a very good fit." Like
and that's in the Glass Menagerie that you said earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to the play. Can you tell us about the speech? So, what part of the play is the speech from, and then why do you love it so much?
The speech is towards the end of the play, and in the story, it's so awful. It's so upsetting. This family goes through all kinds of ups and downs. It's too intricate to kind of sum up easily, but
you should read it.
Yes, one should
or see it.
or see it. So, in the story, there's one point when they think they are inheriting some money, and they go out and buy new furniture. They live in a terrible tenement building, you know, with the bathroom outside, and then it's like 2 rooms, and there's a bunch of them, and it's the whole thing. And they think they've inherited money, and they go out and buy this furniture that's a little tacky, but it's fancy. And they throw a party, and they're all celebrating, and they have a gramophone now, and they everything's going on. They think their fortunes have changed, and they have a party, and this neighbor, Mrs. Tancred, stops by, and she's just learned that her son has been shot, and everybody gets very sober and loving to her and chilled by it. And after she leaves, bit by bit, they go back to the party, the way human nature is.
Yeah, of course.
It's like they do sing along, just like the Irish, family type and friends gathering. Towards the end of the play, all kinds of things happen. She finds out that her daughter is pregnant, and also the young man has just disappeared on her. Her old sweetheart doesn't want to take her back. Her own brother turns on her. So the daughter, who Juno's very close to, Mary Boyle, and she's very close to her, and she's, you can tell she's going to take care of her and maybe raise this child or whatever. And all the furniture came and got collected because they didn't inherit the money, so the flat's kind of empty and dreary. And then another neighbor comes back and says, there's a policeman downstairs, they want to talk to you. And right away she's like, why do they want to talk to me? And she says, well, a body's been found and they think it's your son. And she's like, oh, it's true. And she's stricken. And then that lady leaves, and Mary and Juno are alone in the room. And Mary's like, oh, I dread it. And that goes into the speech. So that's what's going on. And then there's one more scene between the captain and Joxer, and they're very wasted and very drunk, and you get the feeling the whole family unit is now breaking apart. Very tragic. Yeah. And my daughter at the time, she's 21 now, and this was several years ago. So she was like either a freshman in high school or in middle school, and she loved to come to the Irish Rep and do her homework in my dressing room. And she would come and watch parts of 1 and 2, acts 1 and 2. And then when it got, after Act 3 started, she would creep downstairs and everyone would say, but this is like the big climax.
Your mom is smashing it.
That's right. You need to see, you'll want to see this. And she's like, it's too much for me. It's too much. The mother-daughter scene. So
I completely understand that. I think my brother, who is now a screenwriter and a very successful theatre director, he used to act, and we are very, very close. And I used to get very emotional, even like, I'm not saying like tiny child, but as a teenager, as an 18-year-old, you know, I would get very emotional seeing him in something where his character was set upon in some way or going through something hard. Like I sort of couldn't quite detach reality from character.
Yeah.
So I can totally get how your daughter
Nellie doesn't even really like to watch Succession anymore because Kieran is a family friend.
And he's so horrible.
The whole connection, the liaison between.
Oh, right,
like,
of course.
Oh,
yeah.
gross. Like, so I don't
need to see that.
I don't know if she
that's
watches
so
in
funny.
secret, but she will not.
So he doesn't want to be sat next to you as it's playing.
Yeah,
that would be too much.
like that. Yeah.
So why do you love it so much? It's obviously a brilliantly written speech and a brilliant play. Was it a particularly joyful show?
Yes.
Was it wonderful?
Yes, I loved the Irish Rep. I loved the play. The more we played it and the more deeper I got into it, the more I loved it. I loved every actor in that play. And also, when we were in previews, I hope I'm not going to get Kieran O'Reilly in trouble for this. But, so we would play this scene that I'm talking about. And then we'd make our final exit. Mary Mallon, who played Mary, will in this. And then the two fellows come in just shit-faced and play their last scene, which is very dark. So they'd be waiting in the wings to come on, right? And we'd come off and we'd both be like, snotty-nosed and swollen eyes and crying and a mess. And so it was early preview. Kieran, I just kind of see him in the dark, like kind of backlit by the stage, light back there. And he reaches out his hand like this to me, and I thought he was going to just squeeze my hand.
Yeah, be like, well done. Oh my God.
He just slipped a little shot of Irish whiskey. So it became a thing where Mary Mallon.
Oh my God, perfect.
So everything about it was just magical.
I think it was really interesting when we first met and we talked a bit about this. You got quite emotional, even just talking about the speech.
Yeah.
And I sort of recognize that. I don't know if I've got a specific speech that feels like that, but I definitely recognize that from these moments where it's very hard to sort of talk about them without going, oh God.
Well, one reason I think I kept delaying doing this is that it comes at the, at the fullness of the play. So you have all the things that lead up to it. So, I mean, I can read the speech, but if you see it in the context, and the actors had all those things happen to her before she gets to it, I was worried it wouldn't be the same animal it is in my
I completely understand that, do you find it, this is maybe a more general acting question, do you find it very easy to make yourself cry when you're in character?
To make myself cry?
To cry. Maybe that's quite a revealing term of...
I'm a crybaby in general.
Right. Well, I'm a crybaby.
Okay.
But I don't know that I've ever been able to cry on stage. It's weird.
No, you mustn't worry about it. You mustn't think.
I cry too much elsewhere.
Yes, you try not to cry.
Yeah.
No, seriously. Sometimes that's more moving if you see someone actually not cry.
I said this in series 2. I think it's in the interview with Jack Thorne. And there's a moment where we're talking about I think actors crying. And I said, I think it's better sometimes if you don't actually cry, but you look like you're just holding it back. And he was like, really? Who told you that? And I was like, oh, maybe that's something just said to me to be kind, because I was like, I can't cry.
I think it's, well, when that happened between you and me.
Yeah.
I got embarrassed, there's something to seeing someone's eyes turn pink, which is almost better because, I've had directors who are like, is that actor enjoying crying too much? Because we want the audience to cry.
Yes.
Like in this play, I just think it doesn't matter if you cry or not. It'd be very hard
not to
be made of stone not to cry, because she's her daughter's pregnant, the boyfriend's left, the father's unmitigating drunk, and she finally sees that she must leave.
Yeah.
And then her son is killed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
her home is empty. So
And are you
she's
in the
just
middle of
lived
a
off her
long
sisters.
scene? Like, are you?
It's a long scene.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not like TV where it's like an action, be in despair.
That's right. But once that character comes in and says, there's the policeman downstairs and they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
This is horrible. Like,
Oh God.
is Jack dead? Did Jack kill somebody? Is Johnny dead? Where's Johnny? Like, see, I'm getting
Yeah.
tears.
Give her all the awards, all of the awards.
But I'm not trying to make myself.
Yes, no.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not. I don't think I could. I don't think I would be good at making myself cry because that I think it's too much pressure. And also, there's these actors that like the tear, they never wipe it away.
This is it. Okay, so I always say this. Like, this is my pet peeve on screen. It seems to happen more on screen than in theatre, but it does happen a bit in theatre. But my pet peeve is people who are clearly capable of making their eyes water, and audiences seem to be very impressed by actors who can make their eyes water. And so, like, someone will stand there and have this emotional scene, and it'll fill and it'll fall, and their voices don't change. And I always think, for anyone I've ever seen cry, and certainly for me when I cry, the first thing that goes is my voice, or my breath, or my nose starts running.
That's right.
Way before actually water falls out of my eye.
Yeah.
But I absolutely get that in this scene and this speech, I think any of the times that I have felt the most likely for it to well up is when, and it's not being method acting, it's not sort of absolutely believing you are the person, but sometimes when something comes at the end of a long scene that has been very hard for the character, you cannot help. And again, when it's written so well and you say certain words, you cannot help but like say those words and for your body to not have a reaction to that. Okay, right, I'm going to take out my scrubby little notes and just see
let's have some scrubby notes.
What else I had in here that I haven't asked. Well, so one of my questions was Juno an offer or an audition? And I think you've half answered this already. It sounds like it was a semi-offer, but then did have to
I did have
audition.
to just go and have lunch with Charlotte Moore, and then she still was worried, I think, about my voice. We went into the theater, and I don't know how I persuaded her. I just tried to be like...
Did you read a bit of it then?
I did.
Yeah.
So it's like a voice audition.
Yeah.
It was weird. I just tried. I don't know what I did. I don't remember what I did. I think we picked a bit where I could be sort of, you have a chest voice, sort of. Yeah.
But was she persuaded by that? Like, did she at the end of that, was it?
Yeah,
she
was like, okay, yeah, you're, she was directing. And so she was like, yeah, okay, you're my Juno.
Oh my God, wonderful.
So excited, and then immediately terrified.
Was there anything when you actually played her that really surprised you?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think the whole thing surprised me. Because again, if you're thinking right away of calling Dewhurst or somebody, then you're like, oh, I'm an imposter. You have this imposter syndrome reaction about all of it. But I kept finding that she was closer and closer to me.
Are you someone, well, actually, I have a two-pronged question here.
I love it two-pronged.
Did you, first of all, did you watch it ever before you played it? So you hadn't seen Juno. I think that's helpful. Yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful. And the second thing was, do you have a way in which you approach, this is now a more general acting question, you approach a script? And does it vary depending on whether it is a beautiful theatrical script written by Sean O'Casey or a screenplay by the likes of Jesse Armstrong? Do you have a way that you approach something when you're first given it?
I think that one thing that's desirable but harder to do as life goes on is to, if I've been offered something or if I have an audition for something, is to read the whole thing in one sitting, which is harder and harder to do as you go through life because you've got other responsibilities and you get tired. But I think that can be a game changer.
Yeah.
Also, as time goes on, I've taken to reading it aloud.
And so, just your lines, but reading it all aloud at the beginning, or reading the whole thing aloud?
The whole thing aloud.
Wonderful.
Because, and also when I learn lines, I try to kind of shadow learn the other line. Like I just try to not forget that you're acting on the other person's lines too. Like that whole thing.
Yes, that's helpful.
Do you know what I mean? Instead of just, because I get lazy and I want to just learn them by rote. I do a fair amount of that, but I try to just, read through the scene aloud a lot. And then you kind of know them just from that,
Yeah.
Also, my friend Allison Janney, she told us this. We were doing this play Blue Window at the Manhattan Theater Club a long, long time ago. And she told us this story in the dressing room, and we all thought it was brilliant. Well, we're talking about when you have a big speech.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you're good. Okay, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, here it
Yeah.
comes, here it comes. And I have to do this in that speech, I have to do that, and I have to da, 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 to hit these marks. And we're talking about how you avoid that. And she said, I can remember it like it's yesterday, she said, in my mind, right before I start the first sentence of it, I say, and it goes something like this.
I love
Isn't
that.
that brilliant?
Oh, I'm going to use that. Okay, so because we've had a lovely conversation, but before we do the speech, to return to Succession, because we are talking a mere few days before it finishes for good.
It's true.
And I'm going to try and turn this around so that this is, as an audience member, I'm very sad. Yeah. I mean, you just said there, it'll make you cry. Has it been as glorious as we as audience members all hope it has been for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Positively.
Great.
And I mean, I just have a supporting role. I'm not. I'm not.
But you have a supportive role that's
I have a good supporting role.
a very
I mean,
good supportive
imagine, like, compared to the some of the Brian's part, Kieran's part, Jeremy's part, Sarah Snook's part. Like,
oh my God, how will they go on?
And how did they do it? Like, I mean, anyway, I mean, it's just so they're all just incredible. But the whole supporting cast is so superb. Yes, it's been glorious. Like, the writing is
Out of this world.
out of this world, and the acting is all all the actors very inventive, mostly theater actors.
Yes.
Mostly
So
theater.
we talked about this briefly, but to just reiterate that on this in this chat, I remember hearing you say that, or I read you say that in an interview once, and I was actually surprised by that.
Yeah,
And you said to me, almost everyone. You said
almost
maybe
I think maybe Nick Braun has not done so. He's dying to do more
which is
theater.
who is Greg?
Right, cousin Greg. But Brian Cox certainly.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Harriet Walters certainly.
Oh yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sarah Snook has done
Yeah.
a lot of theater.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Peter Friedman, David Rashi, Doug Mara,
Yeah.
Dominchik, Fisher Stevens,
And these are all the actors who play like
Mike
Frank,
crew.
Carolina.
Yeah,
Yes, your crew. Yeah.
It's kind of theatrical. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you have to be able to navigate these like long, windy sentences, and you have to have a lot of timing, and it's more talky than TV usually
Yes.
is.
Yes. How aware are you that you're in something that has been such a phenomenon?
Well, now I'm really aware of it. I mean,
What changed? What made you suddenly
just critical mass of people seeing it, because a lot of people just discovered it. So you have the people who've watched all along, and then the wave of people who've caught up by reading about it or hearing their friends say you have to watch it.
Yeah.
Plenty of people who haven't seen it or who are disgusted by it. I don't mean that, but it's just.
Well, that's the very, very first episode, the pilot episode. I remember, and I've heard a lot of people say this, and I can remember seeing that pilot episode myself and sort of being like, I'm intrigued, but I don't know. The question I was thinking was like, who am I meant to root for? Because they're all so awful. And of course, the answer by the end is like, all of them. Everyone in there, even the most despicable people, by the end, you're going, I always say this, that like, particularly with Kendall and Roman, for some reason, I don't know why I feel that more than with the character of Shiv, all I want to do is reach into the screen and give them a cuddle. I feel so desperately like these men just need someone to give them a bit of normal love and none of this would be happening, and that's absolutely true for the character of Shiv as well, but for some reason maybe it's the gender reversal in it or something, but I feel like almost nurturing towards them. I'm like, someone give Kendall a hug, someone give Roman a hug. And again, maybe it's like likable actors
each other
now. It's interesting.
They did
from the beginning.
I think
so do you mean real people?
No.
Characters. Yes, but I feel like that's only a new thing. I feel like at the beginning, because wasn't there a bit where like they have a hug in like the second series, and one of them's like, oh, weird, and suddenly now there's a lot of
the
hugs.
both they did that, I think, but no. Remember it? Well, I think at the end of season 1, there's kind of famous in my memory of them being getting in a boat in the water all together during Shiv's wedding. At that castle.
Yes.
And they're very huggy and lovey-dovey.
Yes, you're right.
Like that's one of the agents in the story to me.
Interesting.
Is that they have each other, and that's why now that Logan's out of the picture, they're forced to go out and kill for food amongst each other.
Yes,
And
oh,
it's
good phrase.
very upsetting. Because they're also sort of like, in my mind, they're like, we always call them the kids.
Yeah,
And they're, you know,
they're
in their
grown
30s and
adults.
40s, you know?
Yeah, with
But they're
unimaginable
kind of
power.
weird, grown up.
But I wonder whether
embryos.
that's
They're so spoiled, they don't know how to do anything. They're
But
like,
even if you're not spoiled, I wonder whether that's sort of my generation, because I'm sort of their age, and I will see my extended family, and we all laugh about the fact that someone at some point will still go, adults up that end, kids down that end, and kids is me and my cousins. My cousins who now have 7-year-old children themselves, you know, so you're like, well, what are they then?
Yeah.
Like babies? Is it like
yeah.
adults, kids, and babies? You know,
Yeah.
and so I wonder whether that's something about a generational thing of
Yeah,
even
it
if you're not
definitely
a
is.
Roy, there is a
Right.
sense of my
No,
generation having had to be like slightly coddled by our parents because of
Yeah.
financial, you know, the economy changing so much or whatever
Right.
it is. You know, we all lean on parents.
But none of them have ever gone out on their own
No.
to discover themselves. They've never done anything that wasn't theirs through nepotism. They haven't made any heroic journey towards anything that I
Yeah.
know. You know, they just have never experienced that. So they're kind of like pupa. It's very undeveloped. You know?
Yeah. Do you have you do so wonderfully with moments without any lines? Do you have moments, and I know that's been a lot in this last series because there's been enormous love, justifiable love for you on Twitter over like the lip quiver when
gosh.
when Roman walks out of the room, or like the eye twitch in the moment, you know, are you aware of, I guess that's the question, are you aware of trying to make something of moments, or are you just you know, you're doing what feels right?
Initially, not this season at all, but initially in season 1, I became aware that I was having kind of silent reactions to Logan and the Roman and Kendall too, and how disgusting they were, and how, you know, so a lot of like private eye rolling or private deadpan, you know, things that were, so I wasn't like conscious of like making a face,
Making a
doing,
moment.
doing
Yeah.
a take or something.
Yeah.
But that became my outlet because it was silent. So, you
Mm.
know, they could be saying something ridiculous and I'd be like biting my lips. So then they started writing that into the story a little bit. Like,
Oh, nice.
I would arch my eyebrow or be like, you know, roll my eyes and then purse my lips.
So that starts coming into the stage directions, does it?
Well, occasions for it.
Jay may do something with her face here if she feels it is right.
Yeah.
But so much of the best stuff, the best reactions come out when someone's not speaking.
Yeah.
So, have you all said goodbye to each other now? Or is there some event? No, I mustn't make you cry. But have you all sort of...
Yes, a number of times, but it still feels like we were hoping that, you know, maybe if the show was nominated for awards, we'd see each other during the award season. But with the writers' strike, I don't know whether there'll be those occasions.
Yeah.
So I don't know, because everyone lives all over the world. Justine and Alan and Nick seem to live in LA. Dad lives in New Jersey. Sarah's in Australia. Matthew is here. I mean, in London. Kiam is in Paris.
So it's, and I think, again, that's one of those things that is wonderful and sad about acting, is that every job, whether it's a TV or a theatre one, it's so fleeting, and you have this incredibly close family.
Yeah.
And it does mean something very strong, but then it also has to dissipate, and you have to be able to be like, oh.
And Sarah said this really chilling thing about halfway through the season. She was like, none of us will be cast together again.
Yeah.
We've made too much of a, and that might be true between she and Matthew McFadden, for instance.
Yes.
Or
yes.
she and Kieran. Or me and Kieran. You know, but because
people will equate it too much with those characters. Yeah.
That was like very sobering, unless we just became a troupe.
Yes, perfect. A rep troupe. It's
the
on.
Succession players.
Yeah. I have to say, I am thrilled that it's coming to an end, though, and that's only because it is such a perfect piece of television, in my opinion, and I think for a lot of people it is, and that's so rare, but it's such a perfect piece of television, and everything from the acting being sublime to the writing, to the storyline, to really not knowing where it's ever going to go, I'm so pleased that Jesse and his team did decide to go, let's end this strongly and let it be a perfect piece of television, rather than,
I suppose so.
you know, continuing and just risking that at some point it drops off. It could have had a few more. Yeah.
Pretty perfect.
Yeah. Who are you saying? It could have done 3 more perfect seasons.
Yeah. No, I think because certainly with what he had in mind, which was this deep dive into the family's psyche, like having what happened in episode 3 happen, threw everything into high gear, you know. So, but as a result, the supporting players and all the usual crises that happen are not in, like, there's the business of trying to buy Gojo, or Gojo buying them, what the deal is, and yet the people who would normally have big roles in that, it's not. It's become like hyper focused on the siblings, you know. Which is good, but so there'd be no coming back from that, you know. But if you hadn't pushed it to that level already, you know.
Could have eked it out.
Oh yeah, because there's so many. In fact, there could be some kind of. I keep thinking there could be some kind of sequel, because
a movie, Succession, the movie.
Or a show that's maybe not about the Roys, but directly, but about the world
Gerri
of media.
and Frank and Carl.
No,
That's
maybe
what we're
none of us are
saying.
in, but that is about journalism, the media, and fake news, and
Well, a little
exploitation of power.
Yeah, a little like, you know,
Super
Aaron
rich
Sorkin and The West Wing being incredible, and then what was the thing that he did? My brain's gone totally blank.
Newsroom.
The Newsroom. I love The Newsroom, and that didn't stick around for very long. But in a similar way, yes, there could be something that has that same Jesse's voice and that same sort of world, but shows us a different.
And maybe some of the same characters.
Maybe Gerri just appears once or twice. Maybe she's a guest and then she becomes a regular.
History does repeat itself.
Okay, amazing. Well, this has just been totally fabulous, and we should read the speech. So before we do that, what I might do is I might even move us to a place where, or I might move this forward so that I can put the microphone a little nearer you. Oh, you know what? I'll just bring this closer. Okay. I will sit out of your way so that I'm not a distraction.
Okay, so once again, to set it up, she's just learned that her son has been shot, and Mary is there with her daughter, and Mary says, "Oh, I dread it." And then Mrs. Boyle, that's Juno, then says this: "I forgot, Mary. I forgot. Your poor old selfish mother was only thinking of herself. No, you mustn't come. It wouldn't be good for you. You go on to me sisters, and I'll face the ordeal myself." Maybe I didn't feel sorry enough for Mrs. Tancred when her poor son was found as Johnny's been found now. Because he was a die-hard. And why didn't I remember then that he wasn't a die-hard or a stater, but only a poor dead son? It's well I remember all that she said, and it's my turn to say it now. What was the pain I suffered, Johnny, bringing you into the world to carry you to your cradle, to the pains I'll suffer carrying you out of the world to bring you to your grave? Mother of God, have pity on us all. Blessed Virgin, where were you when me darling son was riddled with bullets? When me darling son was riddled with bullets! Sacred heart of Jesus, take away our hearts of stone and give us hearts of flesh. Take away this murdering hate and give us thine own eternal love. And they all go slowly out.
Oh.
You see why I was scared to just...
Yeah.
After having picked it, I didn't want to go back on it because I love it so much. But
yeah.
It's a little all or nothing.
Oh, Jay, thank you very, very much. Are you happy with it?
Are you happy with it?
I'm thrilled with it.
Okay, good.
Oh my God, I'm over the moon with it.
Is it too early for day drinking?
No, oh my God.